The story starts in a high school. We see students taking an exam, and there's a girl named Sion who's trying to answer a question but doesn't know the answer. She pretends that her wrist is hurting and wraps it with a compression bandage, but she's actually written the answers on it. A student named Young sees her cheating but doesn't snitch on her. He's a good guy, doesn't like trouble, and just quietly leaves the classroom. After the exam, Sion hears shouting and learns there's a big fight going on. She runs to see what's happening and finds out Young is fighting. The person attacking him is a student named Choi. We find out Choi is a bully, and all the students are afraid of him because he comes from a rich family and never gets punished. He's basically born with a silver spoon. Young tries to defend himself and asks for help, but everyone is too scared to intervene. Choi tries to choke him, but luckily, some teachers arrive just in time and stop him before he seriously hurts Young. Sion watches the whole thing and feels bad about what happened. Later, a teacher takes Young to the office for questioning. The school's lawyer shows up and blames Young for the fight, suggesting that if he wants, they can transfer him to another school and even pay his tuition just to avoid any further trouble. But Young refuses and says he did nothing wrong, that he was the victim. He leaves the office upset. News of the fight spreads across the school. The students all talk about it, saying Young is going to be punished because Choi is from a powerful family and the principal is afraid of him. Then a teacher comes into the class and asks if anyone saw the fight. No one speaks up because they're all scared of Choi. After class, the teacher talks to Sion, who is the class president, and asks if she knows who was at fault. Sion hesitates and says she didn't see anything, then leaves. Later, she runs into Young and feels ashamed because he didn't report her for cheating, but she couldn't tell the truth about the fight. Young tells her, "I thought you were different from the rest, but you disappointed me, you're just like them," and walks away upset. She feels guilty and returns to class, where she hears that Young has decided to leave the school. The students are shocked and look at him through the window, but he's already checked out. He says, "What have any of you gained from this world?" And when someone answers, "Nothing," he replies, "Then take it." A week later, it's New Year's Eve. A student named John is the first to arrive at the school and sees something lying in the snow. He gets closer and is shocked to find that it's Young, lying motionless. Sion arrives at the same time and sees that he's dead. Ambulances and police arrive. It turns out he fell from the rooftop. The principal gets furious and yells at the security guard, blaming him and deciding to fire him. The school president arrives with the school's lawyers and says they'll pay compensation to Young's family so they don't file a lawsuit. Later, the investigator questions John and Sion, asking if Young had any conflicts with other students. They both get nervous and don't mention Choi. The investigator leaves, suspicious. Sion goes home and acts normal in front of her family, but once she's in her room, she starts thinking about Young and gets sad. She reads student comments online, some of which suggest that Choi might have pushed Young. The next day, the investigator receives an anonymous call from a student who is scared to reveal his name, but tells her to read the student's comments. The investigator reads through them and finds out that Choi and Young had a fight before Young died. She decides to investigate further and coincidentally learns from a colleague that Choi is at the police station because he was caught speeding. She uses this opportunity to question him, but he acts arrogant and refuses to answer. He calls his father, who storms into the station, argues with the investigator, and threatens her if she questions his son again. Then he takes Choi and leaves. Later, a lawyer visits the investigator and scolds her for questioning Choi without permission, warning her not to do it again. The case is closed, and Young's death is ruled a suicide. Choi returns to school as if nothing happened, and all the students are terrified of him. Later, we see John in the pharmacy buying medicine for his mother, who's been sick ever since he was born. When he returns home, he tries to stay quiet so she doesn't wake up, but she senses him anyway and yells at him. That night, they go out to eat, but she blames him for her illness and says, "By the way, I don't even love you." Suddenly, she feels unwell, and his father has to take her home. Sion and her friend happen to be in the same restaurant and witness everything. The next day, there's a memorial at the school for Young. The students are deeply affected. John can't handle the situation and leaves. Sion worries about him, tries to message and call him, but he doesn't answer. She searches for him everywhere and suddenly receives a goodbye message from him. She panics, realizing he's planning to harm himself, and runs to find him. When she does, She finds him crying. She approaches and tells him she knows he's in pain, tries to comfort him, and walks with him as he heads home to make sure he's okay. He tells her he's feeling better now and won't have those dark thoughts again. The next day, Sion hears the doorbell ring. She opens the door but finds no one there, only a letter on the ground. She picks it up and reads it. It's from a student saying she saw Young on the school rooftop and saw what happened. She witnessed Choi and his friends beating him up. Choi is the reason for Young's death. Sion shows the letter to her father, who is a police officer, and asks him to reopen the investigation. He tells her to focus on her studies and says he'll handle it. He goes to the school and shows the letter to the principal, who brushes it off as possibly just a student prank and claims there's no proof. Sion then goes to the investigator and tells her everything. The investigator decides to question students discreetly without revealing the letter, hoping to find evidence. Later, Sion goes to school and notices John is in better spirits. She jokes around with him, compliments his hair, and he feels shy and walks away. In class, the investigator starts talking to the students like a counselor until she gets to a student named Juri. We find out Juri is the one who wrote the letter to Sion, but she's too scared to talk to the investigator. After school, Juri is walking with her friend when Choi shows up and starts bullying her again. He throws her bag on the ground and calls her ugly. She's left crying. A journalist sees her, gives her his card, and tells her if she ever wants revenge, he's there to help. Later, Sion sneaks into the library and finds the investigator's file. She sees that the investigator suspects Juri knows something. Sion and her friend meet Juri at a restaurant and try to casually ask her where she was on New Year's Eve, the day of the incident, but Juri gets suspicious and doesn't say anything. She leaves and calls the journalist, agreeing to an interview under the condition that her face is hidden and her voice is altered. He's thrilled. The journalist goes to the school and meets the principal, asking for an interview. The principal proudly agrees, saying he has nothing to hide. But the journalist shows him the letter and accuses him of destroying evidence to cover the truth. The principal is shocked because he didn't know another copy of the letter existed. The journalist secretly records the whole conversation. He then releases the video, including the interview with Juri, with her identity hidden, where she reveals that she witnessed Choi committing the crime. The video goes viral. Choi is furious when he sees it. Juri watches the video and feels proud that she finally got revenge after being bullied by him for so long. But then her friend calls, crying and asking to meet. Juri finds her in a breakdown and tries to convince her to go to the police and tell the truth, but the girl refuses, afraid Choi will hurt her like he did Young. Her friend tries to reassure her, saying she'll protect her, but Juri mocks her, saying, "If you could protect anyone, you would have protected yourself. He bullies you too." Then she cruelly adds, "The students bully you because you're fat," which deeply hurts her friend. She runs away, heartbroken. Juri feels guilty and runs after her to apologize, only to find her lying in the street after being hit by a car. The next day at school, students talk about Choi, record videos of him, and call him a criminal. He loses his temper and tries to start a fight again. Parents start arriving at the school, worried about their kids' safety. The investigator reassures them that she'll look into everything. Sion finds out Juri's friend is in a coma from the accident and confronts Juri, calling her a coward for not telling the truth to the police. But Juri denies writing the letter and claims her friend wrote it. She also accuses Sion of acting like she's better than everyone when she also saw the fight and kept quiet. "We're all guilty," Juri says. Sion is deeply hurt because she knows it's true. She runs out crying. John sees her and follows her, offers to help, but she asks him to leave. He insists on staying and covers her with his jacket so no one sees her crying. Later, Choi's lawyer meets the journalist and demands to know the identity of the girl who wrote the letter. The journalist refuses to give it up and walks away. He then meets with Sion, who asks him whether the girl in the video was Juri or her friend. He doesn't answer and instead tells her, "Find out the reason Young died first. Then you'll know the truth." Sion agrees and promises herself that she will uncover the truth. She returns home. She keeps thinking, not knowing where to start. John sends her a message to check on her, but she asks to meet him. He's happy, of course, thinking it's a date. He gets dressed and heads over to her, but to his surprise, she's sitting there with the rest of their classmates. He feels disappointed, but then Sion says to them, "I want you all to promise me that if any of us gets into trouble, we'll stand by each other." At the same time, the detective meets Choi and his friends, asking where they were on New Year's Eve. Choi refuses to tell her and threatens his friends not to say anything either. The detective gets frustrated and almost loses her temper with him, telling him to cooperate so she can prove his innocence and help improve his image in front of the students. But he still refuses, saying he didn't do anything and doesn't care what anyone thinks of him. He walks away. The detective starts to suspect he's hiding something. The next day in class, the students keep gossiping about him, saying he's the main suspect in Young's death. The teacher hears them, takes their names, and tells them they'll be punished and get marks deducted. Sion tries to defend her classmates since she's the class president, but the teacher gets irritated by her boldness and tries to grab her hand to take her to the office. The other students start filming what's happening. Sion takes advantage of the situation and says, "Then this means we have to uncover the truth ourselves and find out if Young jumped or if Choi pushed him." The teacher gets even more upset and wants to fight her, but John steps in and defends Sion. After that, he takes her to the nurse's office, and she thanks him for standing up for her and asks him not to tell anyone what happened. But Sion's mom sees the video at work and comes home angry. That night, she wakes Sion up and scolds her for keeping it from her. She tells her to stay away from Young's case, but Sion refuses and says she feels guilty because she saw him fighting with Choi and was too scared to speak up. She says it's her fault, and she has to find out the truth. Her parents try to convince her to back off and leave it to the police, but she insists on investigating herself. John sends her a message saying he's going to help her, and they agree to work together. The next day, they start gathering evidence. Then Sion goes to the principal's office and asks him to let them hold a trial in the school to uncover the truth about Young's death. The principal refuses, so she threatens to sue the teachers and says, "Let's see how your school looks after that." He's shocked by her words and tells her, "Fine, if you can get the other students to agree, I'll allow it." She tells him that's easy, and she can do it. Then she goes back to class and tells her classmates, but no one supports her. It's their last year, and they just want to graduate without trouble. She feels disappointed and sits with her friends to think of a solution. They're required to get the approval of 500 students in 3 days. Even though it sounds impossible, they refuse to give up and decide to work together. Each one starts trying to get as many signatures as they can. One of them has tickets to a concert and gives them out for free to anyone who signs. Another hands out snacks and juice. Sion herself carries a big sign and cheerfully encourages students to sign, but they mock her and throw the papers on the ground. She's hurt by their reaction and scared of failing because today is the last chance. That night, John goes to an arcade and gets challenged by some students to beat them in games. He accepts, and although they make fun of him, he ends up winning every game. They're surprised by his skills and impressed by his talent. Eventually, they agree to sign the petition. He goes to meet Sion, who's feeling down and crying because today's the deadline, and she still hasn't reached the required number. But then he sees an ad on her phone for a concert organized by a student named Huang, who loves music and is popular at school. They go to the concert and realize he organized it to help them. He manages to gather the remaining signatures. Sion goes to thank him and asks why he did it, but he doesn't answer and says, "I just want the truth to come out. What matters is that the mission succeeded and they got the required number." The next day, they go to the principal, who's shocked they managed to get that many signatures in just 3 days and has no choice but to allow the trial. Sion and her friends start cleaning up the school's assembly hall themselves to prepare for the trial. When they finish, they sit together to plan what to do next. Huang promises to force Choi to attend, while Sion plans to bring jury as a witness. They also need someone to be the judge, so they choose the top student in the school and ask one of their classmates to convince him. She's scared at first, but Sion tells her she's the only one who can do it because he has a crush on her. The plan works, and he agrees. Later, Sion goes to see Jury, but Jury pretends to be in shock and not speaking because of what happened to her friend. She writes on her iPad. Sion asks her to testify against Choi so he can be punished for the crime, but Jury refuses and denies seeing anything. Sion's friend gets angry and yells at her, saying, "I know you're lying. Are you going to stay a coward forever?" Sion calms her down and takes her away. Jury cries, scared to testify against Choi because he comes from a rich family and could hurt her. Then Sion finds out that Jury's mother posted a video blaming her daughter's friend, saying her own daughter had nothing to do with the letter. Sion realizes Jury definitely won't testify now, and her other friend is still in a coma. She returns to her friends, and a journalist shows up saying he'll help them with the trial. He shows them a video of the teacher who had felt guilty because Young was in her class and she couldn't help him. She agrees to testify in the trial. The students are happy she's on their side, and it gives them more encouragement to uncover the truth. They invite her to dinner, and everyone enjoys the meal, except Huang, who skips it and instead goes to the club where Choi and his friends hang out. He insists on talking to Choi and tells him, "I want you to attend the trial as the accused, and I'll be your lawyer and defend you." Of course, Choi mocks him and refuses. But then Huang says something that stops him. "I believe you're innocent. I want you to prove to everyone that you didn't do it." Still, Choi doesn't believe him, thinks he's being tricked, gets angry, slaps him and tells him, "If I see you again, you'll regret it," then leaves. When Choi gets home, he finds his dad waiting, furious because of the rumors going around. Neighbors even wrote, "Your son is a killer" on their walls. Choi is upset, leaves the house, and spends the night at the club. His mom tries calling him, but he doesn't answer. Meanwhile, a strange man enters their house and sets it on fire. A huge fire breaks out. When Choi finds out, he runs over and sees fire trucks trying to control the blaze. He sees his grandmother outside, and she tells him his mom is still inside. He breaks down and tries to go in and save her, since she's the only one who treats him kindly, but the firefighters stop him. There's a massive explosion. Sion hears what happened and starts to worry that the fire was caused by the video and fears Choi might go after Jury next. She rushes over to Jury's house and finds Choi standing there, banging on the door, shouting for Jury to come down so he can take revenge. His grandmother died because of the situation. Sion stands in front of him and tries to calm him down, telling him Jury had nothing to do with it, but he's overwhelmed with grief and rage and nearly hits her. John arrives just in time, pulls Choi away, and fights with him. Jury's mother comes out and throws water at Sion, crying and shouting, "Leave my daughter alone, she's suffered enough." The students are upset by what Jury's mom did, but Sion apologizes, saying she's just upset about her daughter. Jury watches everything from the window. The detective arrives and takes Choi with her to prevent further trouble. Later, Sion breaks down crying over everything that's happened. Huang sees her and sends her comforting messages anonymously. John comes and gives her a warm drink to help her feel better. She's touched by his kindness and thanks him. They rejoin their friends, but they're unsure what to do with the trial only 2 days away. Then Huang surprises them by saying he's managed to convince Choi to attend the trial as the accused. Suddenly, a young man arrives asking to meet Sion. When she goes to see him, she learns he's Young's older brother. He tells her, Young didn't do that to himself. This envelope is proof. He asks her to use it in the trial. Of course, she gets excited. At home, she holds the envelope, eager to know what's inside, but decides to open it during the trial. The next day, she oversleeps, quickly gets dressed, and heads out. John is waiting for her with his bike. She's happy, hops on behind him, and they ride at full speed, arriving just before class starts. When they're done, everyone gathers in the hall. They interview students to pick the jury. A girl named Baek enters, and everyone is shocked because she's Choi's ex-girlfriend. They're unsure whether to approve her, so they take a vote, and it's a tie. The final vote is up to the top student, who's also the judge. He surprises them by saying he agrees. We then see Jury coming out of a therapy session to deal with her trauma. Another student spots her and reacts badly, pointing at her. When they leave the clinic, Jury tells her mom she won't go again. Her mom offers to transfer her to a new school where no one knows her, but Jury refuses. She says, "I didn't do anything wrong, so why should I run away? Stop the car now, I'm not going with you." Her mom gives in and lets her go. Jury gets a message from Sion saying the trial is tomorrow and asking her to come. Meanwhile, John is at home when his mom finds out they're holding a trial at school. She starts yelling at him, telling him to stay out of it. He refuses, so she gets even angrier and tries to physically stop him, but he pushes her off and leaves the house. He wanders the streets, unsure of what to do, feeling lost because he has no one. Baek Yi-chan goes to the school's meeting room, but Huang comes in and sees him there. He realizes that Yi-chan has left home and feels sorry for him, so he takes him in and lets him stay at his place. He even lets him sleep on his own bed. Yi-chan thanks Jung for standing by him and ends up falling asleep from exhaustion. The next day, the first court session begins. Everything proceeds according to plan. The student's parents are present to watch, but the mother of the victimized student disapproves of what's happening, thinking it's just child's play. Her son, who is the judge, escorts her out of the courtroom. Then Choi enters as the defendant, and it's confirmed that he did indeed appear. Seon begins presenting the charge against him, saying that they had assumed Young wasn't attending school because he was depressed, but the truth was entirely different. He wasn't coming to school because of Choi, who used to beat and torment him. She accuses him of being the one who pushed Young off the roof. Choi gets angry and denies everything. Hwang, as his defense attorney, starts defending him and calls the investigator as a witness. She states that based on her investigation and all the evidence, Young jumped off the building himself. There was no murder. But then Seon presents the envelope she received from Young's brother, which contains 2 cinema tickets that Young had booked for the day he died. She questions how Young could have planned to go to the cinema if he was planning to kill himself. Her argument shocks everyone. Hwang continues defending Choi, saying he had no motive, hatred, or ill will toward Young that would make him harm or kill him. He says the fight between them was just a regular argument, the kind that could happen between any students. He then asks Choi to describe what happened. Choi says that Young kept provoking him, calling him a failure and a bully until he lost his temper and fought with him. Seon asks Choi where he was during the incident. He replies that he was drinking with friends at a club. Seon tries to confirm with his friends, but one of them shocks everyone by saying that Choi wasn't with them and had forced them to lie to cover for him. This revelation causes chaos, and the students begin arguing. The judge is forced to call for a recess. Hwang takes Choi back to a room to calm him down and tells him to trust him, that he will prove his innocence. Back in court, Hwang tells Seon that Choi's friend claimed he wasn't with him at the time of the incident. Simultaneously, a letter arrives from a witness saying that she saw Choi and his friends on the school roof, which means someone is lying. Seon is taken aback and doesn't know how to respond because jury isn't there to testify. The judge postpones the case to the next day due to a lack of conclusive evidence against Choi. The court ends, and the students leave the courtroom. Seon sits with her friends trying to think of a way to prove the accusation. Suddenly, Jury appears in disguise, surprising everyone. She says that her friend saw the incident and told her, so she will relay the events on her behalf. She hands them a paper with detailed information about what happened to present to the court. However, Seon keeps pressing her to tell the truth until Jury breaks down and confesses that she was the one who actually witnessed everything. She tears up the paper and tells them she won't put her life at risk for their sake and walks away. Seon tries to follow her, but doesn't catch up. Then she sees Jung and tells him she suspects that Jury is lying and that they need to verify the truth. Meanwhile, Choi is furious with the friend who betrayed him and starts looking for him to get revenge. Suddenly, his father arrives, angry that Choi went to court without permission and forces him to go home. Hwang sees what's happening and feels sorry for Choi, realizing that he's not being treated well at home. That night, Hwang waits outside Choi's house. When Choi comes out, Hwang tries to talk to him, but Choi tells him to stay out of his life. Hwang gets angry and says he needs to trust him and tell him where he was on the day of the incident so he can help defend him. Choi is moved by his words and confesses that he was drinking with friends at the club and went home drunk, but he saw a strange man in his house. When he asked his father about it, his father told him he was hallucinating. Hwang is surprised by this and starts suspecting Choi's father, feeling that there's a secret that needs to be uncovered. The next day, the friend who had testified against Choi meets with Seon in disguise, afraid that Choi might see him and fight him. He tells them the name of the bar they were at during the incident. They search through photos until they find one that proves he was there. They ask him to testify, but he refuses. Afraid of Choi, he leaves, but they find another friend waiting for him outside. He's angry and accuses him of betrayal. They fight, and one of them pushes the other down the stairs. Everyone is shocked as the injured student suffers a serious wound. Seon and her friends gather, and she feels guilty, wanting to cancel the mock trial. Hwang refuses, saying they have to prove Choi's innocence. Seon gets angry and says, "Fine, I'll be the prosecutor and find evidence against Choi to accuse him." They decide to continue. Seon and her friends go up to the roof to verify Jury's story and determine if she really saw the incident or was lying. They compare the details in her written statement. She mentioned hearing a sound like someone stepping on metal, but the rooftop is entirely tiled. Seon walks along the railing and hears the same sound Juri mentioned because the railing is made of copper. This confirms that Juri was telling the truth and that she really saw the incident. That night, Seon goes to Juri's house, but her mother refuses to let her in and says they're moving to another city. Seon asks her to deliver a message to Juri, letting her know they believe in her. Juri hears it from her window and is touched by her words. The next day, the second court session begins. Seon is surprised to see Juri there standing off to the side. She goes to talk to her, and Juri finally agrees to testify, but on one condition, that Choi not be present in the courtroom because she's afraid of his reaction. Seon informs her friends of Juri's condition, and the judge agrees. Choi gets angry when he finds out Juri is going to testify against him, but Hwang calms him down and tells him to comply and leave the courtroom. Hwang promises to take care of things. Juri enters the courtroom to testify but is nervous because of all the people staring at her. She asks to cover her face, but Hwang refuses, saying he needs to see her while she speaks to know whether she's lying or hiding something. The students start mocking her, calling her a coward who lacks confidence. Juri gets angry and tells them, "You're the reason I'm like this." She then breaks down and says, "I'm the one who saw the crime and wrote the letter, not my friend." Everyone is shocked. She says she was too afraid to speak because she thought no one would believe her, that she had no friends to back her up. Everyone is moved by her words. Seon apologizes to her and promises that this time, everyone will believe her. She asks her to take the oath and testify. Juri begins recounting everything she saw. She says she was at a cafe near the school and then wandered around on her own. She saw someone standing on the school rooftop and was curious, so she went up to see who it was. It was dark, but she saw Choi hitting Young and forcing him to stand on the edge. She was shocked and ran away out of fear. Everyone is stunned. Seon says she went to the rooftop to verify Juri's words and heard the same sound she described, which confirms that her story is true. Seon's mother is impressed by Juri's courage, but her father tries to calm her. Hwang then questions Juri and asks if what she said was the truth or just what she wanted to happen so she could take revenge on Choi. She hesitates, but insists it's the truth. She asks to go to the bathroom, and once inside, she breaks down crying, finally relieved to have told the truth. Afterward, Hwang interrogates the deputy principal, who is confident and thinks no student can humiliate him. But Hwang tells him that the school administration sided with Choi because he comes from a wealthy family and ignored Young's rights, even though he was the victim. The deputy defends the school, saying no student testified against Choi or mentioned a fight between him and Young, so they couldn't punish him. But Hwang shows him online posts from students saying they were afraid to speak because they knew Choi was above the law and that nothing would happen to him, just like last year when he beat another student and the school did nothing but transfer the victim. The deputy principal is stunned and speechless. During a break, Seon brings food for herself and her friends. They're happy and thank her, but her mother calls her out, asking why she put herself in danger climbing around the school for any reason. Seon apologizes and promises not to do it again. She thanks her mom for the food she loves. They return to court. Choi's friend, now out of the hospital, comes to testify. Choi gets angry when he sees him and wants to fight. The judge tells Hwang to calm his client down, warning that the principal might cancel the entire mock trial if any trouble happens. They continue the session. Seon begins questioning the witness and shows a photo of him at the bar during the incident, proving his alibi. Then the student shocks everyone again by saying, "By the way, Choi confessed to me that he was the one who killed him." Choi loses it and tries to attack him. Everyone is stunned, realizing Choi might actually be the culprit, but Hwang requests a 1-hour recess, saying he has crucial evidence. He gives the case file to Young and asks him to take his place in court and defend Choi if he doesn't return in time. Hwang goes to find Choi's closest friend, the one who was with him during the incident. He tells him that Choi needs him and asks him to testify in court, but the friend refuses and doesn't want to go. Hwang tells him he's a coward, that he was happy being friends with Choi when he was popular, but abandoned him as soon as trouble came, even though he holds the key to Choi's innocence. The student becomes agitated and starts arguing during the trial. At that moment, the trial resumes. Seon responds, and Cho's friend is blamed. Apparently, he had always said he would take revenge on Young if he ever returned to school and that he would get rid of him. But Beck gets angry and says, I know Choi better than you because I was in a relationship with him and he always says things like that when he's angry, but he never actually does anything. The judge silences her since she's part of the jury and not allowed to testify. He ends up having to remove her from the courtroom. That's when John is forced to take Hwang's place and starts questioning the student. He asks him, Did you like Choi? Did you consider him your friend? The student says no, that he only hung around Choi because he was rich and nothing more. He even says he hated him because Choi treated people like they were his servants. That's exactly what John was trying to get at. He tells the judge the witness hated Choi, so they shouldn't take his word seriously because he could be lying. At this point, Hwang returns with Choi's close friend, whom he convinced to testify in court. The friend says, I met Young after the fight between him and Choi. I talked to him and asked, Did you provoke Choi so he'd hit you? Young gave him a strange answer, saying, I had a goal for that fight, to meet someone specific, and I succeeded in my mission. Everyone is surprised by this response and doesn't understand it, but Hwang is the only one who does. He realizes that Young fought with Choi on purpose so he could meet his lawyer. Then there's a flashback, where Young is seen stealing a file from an office before his death. The file contained the names of students who were given VIP treatment because their parents were wealthy and powerful. These students got access to exams without even asking. Choi was among them. The lawyer had asked Young to delete the files and photos because it wasn't in his best interest, but Young refused. He was determined to expose the truth and bring justice to the school, where all students should be treated equally. Back to the present, Hwang's father leaves the courtroom after making sure no one found out that Young wanted to meet him. That was Young's real reason for coming. Later, Seon calls in a witness who had previously been assaulted by Choi. He's a young man who recounts what happened to him. He says, I was walking down the street when I accidentally bumped into Choi and spilled juice on him. I apologized immediately, but he got furious and started hitting me until I passed out. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. I saw Choi's lawyer apologizing to my father and giving him money to drop the charges. My father accepted, but I didn't want to. I tried to talk to my family, but they told me, it's for your own good, son. That money will help you get into a good university. But I still couldn't forgive Choi because he didn't even apologize. I came here today to ask him one question. He approaches him and asks, Why did you hit me? Choi responds coldly, I don't even remember you, but I must have hit you because you annoyed me. The young man says, Then apologize. I ended up in the hospital because of you. Choi refuses and says, You took the money. That should be enough. We're even now. The young man is hurt by this and gets closer to him, throws juice on him, and Choi gets angry and wants to hit him again. But the young man says, I'll give you money and then we'll be even. Choi is moved by his words and realizes that money isn't everything. He truly sees that he was wrong. The trial is postponed to another session. Seon leaves the courtroom and finds the young man waiting for her. He apologizes for what he did. Seon tells him, You didn't do anything wrong. Choi could have hit you again. The young man says, But this time I wasn't going to back down. I just want to thank you. All this time, I hated myself. I felt weak. But because of you, I was able to get revenge. Then he leaves. Around that time, Jury sees the video of what happened and tells her mother that she's not going to transfer schools. I'm staying until I see Choi get punished. We then see Choi changing his clothes, and his girlfriend Baek is waiting for him. She's the only one who defends him and sees him as a good person. She tells Hwang, do something to fix his reputation. Choi is a victim. Nobody knows what he's been going through. Hwang stays silent, letting her go. Choi's close friend comes with clean clothes for him, knowing that he was going to leave. Hwang talks to him and asks why Choi acts this way, getting into fights for no real reason. The friend says it's because of Choi's father. That's why Choi feels powerless and resorts to drinking or hitting people to let out his anger. Later, Choi goes home and talks to his father, asking if he met with Young or if something happened between them. His father gets nervous and says, No, son, nothing happened. I didn't meet him. The next day, Seon gets a call from Young's brother asking to meet her. She goes with her friends, and he gives her Young's phone, saying he had used it before he died. Strangely, a specific number had called him repeatedly on New Year's Eve. He says he tried calling the number back, but no one answered. Sion is intrigued and takes the number to investigate. She calls customer service to ask about the number but is shocked to learn it belongs to a street phone booth. She starts wondering who might have called Young on the day he died. She meets with the investigator and tells her what she found out, asking her to look into the matter. Meanwhile, Choi's mother goes to see Huang and tells him what jury wrote is true and that Choi is innocent. He wasn't even at school that day. She takes off her glasses, and it's clear she has marks on her face. She says there was a lot of hitting and destruction that day. Choi took me to the hospital and stayed with me. He won't say anything now because he's afraid for me. I'm willing to testify in court. Just prove my son's innocence. Huang is moved by her words and tells her she doesn't need to put herself at risk. He promises to prove Choi's innocence without her having to come to court. He then asks her about the man Choi saw in the house on the day of the incident. She hesitates and says she doesn't know him, but remembers seeing him sitting with her husband. The only thing she recalls is that he had a burn on his neck. Later, Sion and her friends go to the phone booth near the school and find a nearby shop. They ask the owner to check the surveillance footage from that day, but are shocked to find that it's been deleted. However, the owner says, "I remember that day. I saw a student crying and trying to call someone. They give him a picture of the students and ask him to identify anyone, but unfortunately, he doesn't recognize anyone." They feel discouraged, and Seon thanks him before leaving. At the same time, Huang goes to the police station and meets Seon's father, who's an officer. He gives him a description of the man with the burn on his neck and asks him to investigate. Later, Seon gathers her friends and tells them about the number that called Young on the day of his death. Ingi gets nervous and asks if she found out who the number belongs to. She says no, and that she showed the student photos to the shop owner, but he didn't recognize anyone. Suddenly, Huang gets a call from Choi, who says, "I'm not playing along with your act anymore." They're all surprised and decide to go see him. When Huang sees Choi, he tells him, "You're a coward. You want to back out?" Choi gets angry and starts arguing with him, saying, "You don't know what I'm going through." Huang breaks down and says, "I'm the one who understands you the most. I'm doing this to save you from what I went through. You need to save yourself and your mother before the same thing that happened to my mom happens to her." Choi is moved, but refuses and walks away. That night, his mother goes to the police station and turns herself in. She goes to pick up her son and tells him, "We have to run away from this city." They take a taxi and head to the airport. The next day, Sion sees a news report about Choi's father being arrested. Everyone finds out the truth and what Choi had been going through. The school invites Sion and her friends to a restaurant and tells them, "I know you hate Choi, but at the end of the day, he's your classmate, a normal student. Stop the trial. What you're doing is hurting him, and I don't want him to suffer anymore." But Huang refuses and says the trial must continue to prove Choi's innocence. At the next court session, Seon feels guilty because she didn't know what Choi's life was like or what his father had done to him. Her friends comfort her, and Huang tells her, "I believe he's innocent. Someone else did this to Young, and I'm determined to catch them." Later, when he gets home, he tries to access Young's email. He keeps trying different combinations until he finally gets in and finds pictures of the VIP students. He concludes that this is the reason Young was killed. John walks with Sion and walks her home. He notices she has a fever and gets worried, telling her to rest. She's touched by his concern and realizes she likes him. She says goodbye and goes inside. Her mother later goes to wake her up for dinner and is shocked to find her sick. She panics and calls her husband, who carries Sion on his back to take her to the hospital. The next day, her friends find out she didn't come to school because she's sick. They all decide to visit her. Her father is surprised but doesn't respond. The next day, the session resumes, and Huang is happy that Choi decided to show up. He's relieved to know Choi will stay and that he can help prove his innocence. The trial begins, and a police officer starts testifying. Then her father tells the story he knows. He says the man Choi saw at the house was a professional criminal. Choi's father had hired him to start a fire in their home to collect insurance money and get a permit to build a new house. That's why the criminal visited the house multiple times, including on New Year's Eve. But Choi was at home that day, so the criminal had to run away. That means Choi has an alibi. He was at home when Young died. Everyone is moved by this revelation and realizes Choi is innocent. He wasn't the one who killed Young. Huang is thrilled that he succeeded in his mission, but then he asks to interrogate Choi himself to confront him for the other crimes he committed. He tells him, "You used to bully the students and beat them, and then you'd give them money to keep quiet. Among the things he did was that he locked Juri in the bathroom, closed the door on her, and that's what led Juri to write the letter and accuse Choi of the crime to get revenge for what he did to her. Choi cries, looks at the students, and remembers what he did. He's genuinely remorseful and feels guilty. He apologizes to them, tears falling from his eyes, and asks them to forgive him. Juri breaks down and confesses she was lying. She says she recognized the voice she heard because she had stood on the photos before, and she had stood there many times thinking about ending her life, all because of what Choi did to her. The final judgment is postponed to the next day. Choi goes to talk to Hwang and asks him, "Why did you do this even though you're supposed to be my lawyer?" Hwang tells him, "I promised I'd get you acquitted of the murder charge, but you still have to pay for your mistakes so you won't repeat them." After that, Sion is sitting alone, feeling frustrated because Choi will be acquitted. She receives a message from an unknown number telling her to keep going, so she can find out the real reason for Young's death and more details to identify who was behind it. She doesn't find anyone, but she sees Hwang going home and starts to suspect him again. The next day, when she's about to go to school, her mother tells her, "I'm proud of what you did." Sion feels happy and thanks her. As she steps out of the house, she finds Jun waiting for her as usual. Then she gets a message saying that Juri's friend has woken up from her coma. She quickly goes with her friends to visit her. They're all happy to see her and thank her for standing by Juri through the past period. They're surprised that she still loves Juri and considers her a friend even though she caused the accident. Her friend tells them, "Juri is kind. She didn't mean what she said. She's always stood by me and has always considered me her closest friend." The next day, Sion and her friends are shocked to find that the old principal is back in his position. He makes the school tell them to stop the trial, or else they'll be expelled. Sion is unsure what to do. When she returns home, she has to tell her family. Her mother fears for her future and asks her to stop, since Choi was proven innocent. But Sion refuses and says, "I have to find out why Young died." She then receives a call from the reporter who tells her, "By the way, I found out how the principal came back. It was Hwang's father who reinstated him." She's shocked and asks about him. He tells her he's a famous lawyer with connections to powerful people in the country. He's the one who ordered the principal to stop the trial in the first place. Sion gets even more determined by what she hears. She goes to meet Hwang and tells him that they might be expelled from school. He's surprised because he's part of the team and hasn't received any warning. He realizes that Paul is behind it. When he gets home, he confronts his father and tells him, "I won't abandon my friends. If you try to expel them from school, then I'll leave too." The next day, Sion gathers her friends and tells them, "I've decided to continue the trial." But they also refuse to leave her and decide to continue the trial with her because they are a team. She's touched by what they're doing for her and thanks them. They stay up late together working on the case. Suddenly, the power goes out, but it turns out to be a surprise party for Sion's birthday. They celebrate with her and ask her to make a wish. She's moved by their kindness and wishes they'll stay friends forever. They sing, dance, and spend a fun time together. The next day is the final court session. Sion calls their art teacher to testify since he was close to Young. She asks him about Young, and he tells them he was a shy but kind person. He also reveals that Young used to use an email not under his real name to talk to students and encourage them, and that's the big surprise. Sion says, "This is the email that used to send me messages and give me confidence. But what's strange is that I still receive messages from that email after his death." The teacher says, "A friend of his accessed the email and continued what he was doing, but I don't know who it is." They find out that the real reason Young was expelled wasn't the fight with Choi, but because he wanted to expose photos of the VIP students. Sion is shocked by this and asks him to explain more. He says those students receive special treatment because they come from rich families. Sion decides to summon Hwang's father for questioning. To her surprise, he agrees. She asks him if he had any involvement in expelling Young from school. He denies it. She tries to bring out files or photos as proof but can't respond. Then, Hwang decides to reveal the truth. He opens Young's email and shows the pictures and files he found on it. His father is shocked by what he did, but denies everything, saying, "These files aren't real. Anyone could have forged them." The judge calls for a recess. Sion leaves the courtroom and is surprised to see the store owner arriving to testify. He tells her, "I saw the student who was on the phone on the day of the incident, and he's here among you." She goes with him to find out who it is and is shocked when he points to Huang. She realizes he's hiding something. Back in the courtroom, she decides to call him to the stand and gets him to tell the truth. To her surprise, he agrees. He says, "I was on the rooftop with Young. I'm the reason he died." Everyone is shocked by what he says. They say, You're saying that? You wanted to prove him innocent. You wanted the truth. How could you?" Sion asks him, "What was your relationship with Young? How did you meet?" Huang begins to tell everything. "I couldn't sleep, so I had to go to a psychiatric hospital. I started getting treated there, and that's where I met Young. He was also depressed, like me. From then on, we became friends, but I couldn't help him. On New Year's Eve, I tried to call him several times. I found out he was on the school rooftop. I was surprised and had to go see him. When I got there, he was sitting on the school ledge. I asked him what he was doing. When I tried to talk to him and ask what was wrong, he told me, 'You're deceived about your father. He's not the man you think he is.' I got angry and walked away. I thought he'd be scared and come down. But the next day, I found out he had died. I couldn't take it. I'm responsible for his death. I was wrong. I confessed everything. Now I'm waiting for your judgment." Everyone is moved by what he said. Jun tries to defend him, saying, "I saw him crying and breaking down. That means he truly regretted it and felt guilty." Suddenly, Huang's father walks into the courtroom and finally admits the truth. He says, "Huang is innocent. I'm the one responsible for Young's death. The files and photos of the VIP students are all real. They were all given leaked exams and were being passed unfairly. Young found out and wanted to expose them, so I had to expel him so no one would believe him. Then I met with him and told him to stay away from Huang. I told him Huang was ashamed of him because he was a failure. Because of my words, Young hated his life and decided to end it. He starts apologizing to the students for everything he did. Then the police arrest him after he confesses to abusing his position, favoring certain students, and leaking exams. The judge rules that Huang is innocent and holds the school administration responsible for what happened. At the end of the trial, the parents and teachers clap for the heroes who uncovered the truth, something even the police and investigators couldn't do. The news spreads, and everyone hears about what happened. Young is remembered as someone who sacrificed himself to expose the school's corruption. Years later, we see Sion starting university. She's studying law so she can become a lawyer and imprison criminals. As she leaves her house, Jun is waiting for her like always. This time, he finally gathers the courage and confesses his feelings. He says, "I love you. Will you like and subscribe to my channel?" She replies, "I love you too, and I'll like and subscribe to your channel." He asks her out on a date and she says, "Okay, I'll like and subscribe." Then they go to the movies together. She's happy he finally made a move and accepts with a smile. At the same time, Juri goes to the hospital to visit her friend. She cries and apologizes for what she said. Her friend hugs her and forgives her. As for Huang, he goes up to the school rooftop, but don't worry, he's just imagining Young in front of him. He remembers the memories they shared and tells him, "I'll remember you forever. I'll live my life to fulfill your dream and mine." He sends a message to his father in prison and says, "I forgive you. I'm waiting for you to get out so we can start a new chapter." He decides to run his father's business and become a famous lawyer to defend the oppressed and restore people's rights. All the friends gather together and take a photo, promising to stay friends forever and fulfill Young's wish. And that's where the series ends, dear viewer. If you have friends like these, say thank God. And if you have a channel like this, subscribe. And we're out. Peace.